being honest.
To be honest and truthful in talking about yourself and your opinions. To avoid any behavior that could even appear to harm the honor of yourself or your family by being dishonest. Much of what I've learned about what my old Blackfoot friend, long-standing bear chief, called being a real human being has come from my very supportive Yakama Kala and friend, Levina Kussamwhy Wilkins. Her language is called Ishkasin-Sinwit, which means roughly the way we talk. I don't speak it very well. One word from this language, Pashtun, sounds like Boston and refers to Euro-Americans or white people. No differentiation of color, you'll notice, just a reference to place of origin. It's an obnoxious stereotype working in Native America for white people to claim a Cherokee princess in their past. I don't have any princesses, but I have 2 Cherokee grandmothers who married white men in the 19th century. Some ancestors were ashamed about this, but my Grandma Walker, born in a log cabin in Indian Territory in 1900, was very proud of it, and she made sure I was too. I'm a Pashtun, or white man of Missouri Cherokee descent. I claim this because these grandmothers in southwest Missouri hid who they were to keep their children and themselves safe. I won't hide who I am. I have many more Pashtun ancestors from England, Ireland, and Scotland. A few married Native people and advocated for them. Others participated in their massacre. They're all part of me. Pashtun miners first came through these hills looking for precious ore in the early 19th century and raped several women out gathering food, which sparked a war lasting 3 years. Assaults and violence toward Native American people often began with women. Indigenous women in the U.S. still have the highest incidence of rape of all ethnicities, and the vast majority are perpetrated by non-natives. I was a fish out of water when I first came here. In the native way, time isn't linear, it's circular. English words like intergenerational or historical trauma mean something different here. Native people in North America don't have the European post-Enlightenment divide between mind and spirit like psychology does. For them, intergenerational trauma is a spiritual wound. Before I began writing Coyote Swing, before I could write about the arrogance of imposing psychiatric and psychological ideas from a culture that's tried to destroy Native people, I had to be taught just to be still in the presence of this sacred land. I had to see myself in a different way in the universe, from 7 directions. Heart, mind, body, spirit, above me, below me, and within me. Encountering these ways for the first time, I began to feel I had little to offer, which was painful, but thankfully it was untrue. I could challenge the very broken system in which I worked. I could start helping to dismantle the colonization of the U.S. mental health system in Native America. Some psychological ways I knew were useful. For example, I could use my whiteness as a safe means to explore what walking in 2 worlds means to Native people. The Níix Ttáwaaxt virtues were created by my Kala for Yakama people in Ishkasin-Sinwit. Calling them virtues imposes the colonizing language on their very origin. Yakama language is descriptive. Many more English words are often needed to translate it, a sobering thought to ponder considering how Pashtun ancestors sought to destroy this beautiful language. These virtues are not mental health language. That would be an imposition too. They're simply ways for seeking to become a real human being and to create positive change in the world. In fact, these virtues were very out of step with the mental health language of my employer in 2000. I'm referring to the main provider of behavioral health in Indian country, the United States Indian Health Service. I came to dread the drive into the IHS clinic because I worked in the mental health department. We had a big red sign there that read Mental Health Department. Some clients wouldn't sit beneath it, and I'd have to go meet them in the main waiting area. Indian Health Services always freely applied to Native patients the psychiatric labels of Euro-American culture, what Kala calls the so-called dominant society. These patients have been repeatedly told about chemical imbalances and brain problems of their alleged mental illnesses and how they'd need to take psychiatric drugs. I've been standing in opposition to this false science for many years now. Yaichunal, not afraid of any type of challenge, courage, heroic perseverance. To show courage, no matter how hard life gets, to never give up. To be willing to put up with negative behaviors and pressures from others in order to do the right thing. To be a leader when others hesitate to do something positive. This indoctrination of biopsychiatric pseudoscience at IHS has worked to an extent. It's been adopted by some Native people. They're seldom informed of alternative ideas. Their cultural views are greatly diminished or made invisible by IHS. But most have no other place to go for healthcare. The link between voluntary and forced assimilation was captured very clearly in a traditional story told in the 1920s by William Charley, a Yakama of the Klickitat people, to his Pashtun friend, Lucius Virgil McWhorter. The cat belongs to the white man and goes ahead of his travels everywhere. The white man followed Cat to America, which until that time belonged to the red man. Coyote, Spilly Eye, was preparing to bring the Indians to a higher stand in life, bring them to education and a written language. Cat did not want this, so he fixed to get rid of Coyote. So he fastened a great swing to the sky. It was a big swing, and the people could swing far out over the world and be brought back by the swing again to their own country. Coyote came along and wanted to swing. Cat let him get in the swing and began swinging him. He shoved the swing farther and still farther out, until finally Coyote saw the ocean. He liked this. He asked to be swung over the water, which was done. Then he asked to be sent still farther, that he might see what was on the other side of the ocean. Then Cat shoved him harder, and Coyote saw the land on the other side. He wanted to see still more, and Cat swung him far out over the land beyond the ocean. The swing came back empty, and Coyote was never again heard from. He is supposed to have grown dizzy and fallen from the swing. It is believed that he landed in Germany, for those people are the wisest of all nations, more inventive, more learned than any other country. Coyote is supposed to have continued his work over there, for he had no way of returning to the land of the Indians.
My great-great-grandmother was raped by some soldier scouts. She was a married woman. She had children. My other parts of my family don't like to speak of this, but I think it needs to be heard. The things that our people went through. My grandmother didn't like to speak of it because it was a kind of shame. But the people didn't turn their back on her. The people treated her like a mother to be. She had her child. Her child was born with red hair, blue eyes, and his hair was natural curly. If you were given a life from the Creator, why be ashamed of it? Then you should cherish this life. And she said, come to think of it, she said, my people didn't look upon him as odd or weird or different. Yes, he was a gift. My grandfather was chosen to be a leader of all 14 tribes, and they had selected a wife for him from one of the Canadian bands. And my grandfather said, no, this is the modern day and age. And we are being taught that, we should select our own person to spend your life with. And he selected my grandmother. You had to select your wife by how much berries she could pick, how much food storage they could make, how they could tan their buckskin, how they could make their regalia, everything the woman had to know. And even to this day, our young ladies, like my nieces, they prepare their children to know all these things. And a lot of it is all pointed back to survival. My grandmother used to tell me, she said, oh, she was so happy. She couldn't believe that this man she admired from afar had chosen her to be his wife. Names of our people were created by where they mostly camped and lived. We were nomadic people. We traveled, and that was, again, for survival, to do the roots, to do the berries, to do the fish, even for hunting trips our men went on. All these things our people did. And they were in various different regions. The Plateau Nations, we traveled into Oregon, Idaho, anywhere where the food was harvested. That's where our people went. There was no boundaries. We had no state lines. Oh no, you can't do this for the people over there because, they're in Oregon or they're in Idaho. There was no boundaries. We knew no boundaries. We knew no ownership. This is my land. Get off my land. Or you can't do this in our town. There was no, you can't do this in our village. There was no such thing as that. We were created as one people, and that's the way our people lived and believed. And you will find that in every Plateau nation, we all have the same native songs. We all worship in the same manner. But at that time, the women from the Wenatchee bands. They seen how the schools were demanding our children speak English. They seen how their children were punished for speaking the language. My mother especially, I guess when she was growing up. She was at Fort Simcoe. And she was, they would lock her in closets. Or they get their hands whipped with a ruler. Or they go 2-3 days without food. And they had a jailhouse thing up there at Fort Simcoe. My mom said sometimes because the kids wanted to get out of school, they all would start speaking the language and they got locked up in that jail. All together. And they'd be in there, that way they could speak the language to each other being locked up in that jail. My mother was pretty mischievous, I guess. And they had, in that jail, she described that there was just a trench. And that trench ran through that building with a hole on the end here. But that was their outhouse. Inside that jail. I don't know if that one in Fort Simcoe has it in there like that now. But that's where they had to go bathroom. And they threw the boys and girls all in there together. And even before that, when the Fort Simcoe was an army base, they did that to our people. They threw them all in there. If you had to defecate, that was your problem. Whether there was men and women in there or not, that was your problem. So that was the kind of respect and honor our people were shown during the treaty. I'm sounding bitter, but I can't imagine what those people went through.
Respect. To maintain a spirit of harmony and cooperation with all people, including those who have differing opinions from your own. To show care and regard for preserving and protecting the cultural traditions, beliefs, and unwritten laws of Native people.
Coming from a nation that teaches you honor, respect, give. It's a whole different version of your life versus the European. And like I said, when all of this was going on, the Saluscan family women got together and they made a plan in order to keep our language alive. They said they would take, each of them would take a grandchild and take this grandchild into their home and raise it in the old way totally. That was the only way they could see saving the language at that time. So that's exactly what my grandmother did. She took me because I was the youngest. And she raised me totally in the old way. We had no electricity. We had no running water. We got water from the well. We burned kerosene lamps. We ate totally from the land. When my grandmother learned to can, we preserved, because she was still the wife of a leader. We still had to provide for the people. And so that's what we were doing, and that's what a leader did. He provided for his people. My grandfather had about 5 farms. He farmed wheat. He farmed alfalfa. He farmed, you name it, corn, beans, everything a household needed. That's what his farms consisted of.
Self-denial and gratitude, humility, to be humble, to be grateful just to be helpful to others, to give away all feelings of conceit or arrogance, to be the first one to apologize, to correct your behavior, and to forgive others. It was evident within the first few weeks of employment I wasn't going to fit in well at the IHS, the Indian Health Service. I didn't know anything yet about the history of the U.S. mental health system in Indian country, its roots in brutal places like the Hiawatha Asylum for insane Indians, or how the laudanum and bromides of the past related to the psychiatric drugs IHS so freely dispenses now. I never anticipated how these drugs, ironically called psychotherapeutic drugs by SAMHSA, would become second only to cannabis in illicit drug abuse by troubled Native people, and favored 3 times more than other scourges in their communities like methamphetamine. I suspected, but couldn't yet provide evidence, that psychiatric drugs would contribute to so-called unintentional drug poisoning deaths in Indian country, where the suicide rate remains the highest of all ethnic communities in the United States. I couldn't yet fully grasp how the massive labeling of Native youth, particularly boys with ADHD, the direct descendant of what was once called feeble-mindedness in American Indian boarding schools, would lead to today's surge in stimulant abuse in Indian country. It took time for me to see the past and the present, and to develop an awareness of how much the circular perspective on time in Native America should really matter to every person on the planet. An opportunity arrived soon to join Yakama elders and others in creating a community strategy by applying the traditional ways encapsulated in the virtues Kala had created. We could help troubled youth at Yakama Nation by restoring them to their traditional language and culture, the 2 strongest protective factors for preserving well-being in Native America. All 12 virtues were intrinsic to this effort, but 3 of them felt most important to me. Cautious and careful of all things and others, restrained, peaceful, and responsible. To be careful in your speech and other behaviors so as to avoid harming or hurting anyone, including yourself. To be responsible and accountable for your behavior. To show care for maintaining peace and harmony with all people. Timnaknik. Extending from the heart, compassion. To show kindness and care at all times to others, whether in listening, speaking, helping, or performing a service for them. To consider the feelings of others, to avoid hurting them, and to show concern for their feelings. Atapakwani, deep thought and feeling, meditation and mindfulness, to practice looking at yourself, your thoughts and feelings, to meditate and pray regularly, to be constantly aware of all that is around you and within you, to grow in using your mind at all times, especially when involved in getting an education. The short-lived Níix Ttáwaaxt program received a unanimous resolution of support from Yakama Nation Tribal Council, but its birth was premature. An outside nonprofit and partner turned out to be fickle and dysfunctional, and we lacked the funding to continue. I had to be the one to pull the plug, which was very sad. By 2006, we'd been compelled to move away from Yakama Valley to Seattle. For the next 16 years, I journeyed over the Cascade Mountains every month or so to serve students and faculty members at Yakama Nation Tribal School. Yakama friend, elder, and special education teacher Marilyn Gowdy was my main contact there. Across these many years, the numbers have only gone up. 1 in 5 Native American youth still attempts suicide every year. Taking care and being aware of one's total being, balance and harmony, integrity, honor, nobility and crisis, to take care of yourself and to know yourself, to constantly seek to understand yourself, self-respect, to stay in balance with what you believe, to behave with honor and refuse to get involved in behaviors that would hurt you or others.
But the first thing a child would do when they wake up is they go and take a drink of water. Again, how valuable our water was to us. And give thanks to the Creator for replenishing your body with this life-giving fluid. You give thanks for it. And you continue your day. And I used to hate to do that in the morning. I asked my grandma one day, I said, why do I have to drink water when I'm not thirsty? And she said, shame on you. You're not saying your prayers. You're not giving thanks to the Creator. And I said, but why? What is the purpose? She says, your life. And then she told me how I sleep. See, when you sleep, your eyes run. When you sleep, if you have your mouth open, your mouth runs. And she says, and when you sleep, your body breathes. And when your body breathes, you lose water. This is your life. She says, so you have to take water. Now I need to tell you that my grandmother never took a class of biology. She never took a class of physiology, any of that. But she knew all of this stuff.
Keeping the body clean and pure on a daily basis to remain in accordance to the unwritten law. The body houses the spirit of the mind and heart. Therefore, the body must be cared for with cleanliness and purity to maintain self-dignity and integrity, including preserving virginity until marriage.
Curiosity of children, and our elders and our teachers need to teach our children the whys, especially our native children, that when they ask a question in class, and I've seen this, being a counselor, I've seen this in the classrooms. If a child, especially a native child, asks a question because they didn't understand, they're told, you should have been listening the first time around. If you were listening, you would understand. And our English and our native language are so different. It's so different. Like I had said before, our dialects We're descriptive. We're not specific. And we can say one word in our language and we're saying the whole sentence. And whereas if our kids, if they say one word to one another and they laugh, in their minds they're picturing what they're saying, and they're communicating with each other, and they know what they're talking about because they see the picture just by one word, and they laugh together. And that's the way it is in our language. And my grandma always taught me in reference to living in two worlds, I have to learn. I have to learn the European way, but never forget where I'm coming from. Never forget who I am or what I'm about. But I have to learn this other way. For survival, again we go into survival. In order to survive in the outside world, you have to have this education.
Recognizing who you are with love. The spirit of the elders and the knowledge of family tree should be known by all of their descendants. This is proof of self-identity in recognizing the gift of life and love that was left to all the descendants by those who gave of themselves for the yet unborn.
When I started school, I talk about trauma. It was traumatic for me. Now remember, I was raised by my grandmother not to speak English, or I was raised to live the old way. I never wore shoes. And when I started school, I had to wear shoes. They hurt my feet. They were miserable, but I had to wear them. My grandma also said, you keep your body covered. So I had to wear long, ugly brown socks. And all my clothes were homemade. I didn't have nothing bought. My mother was a good seamstress, though. I didn't mind that, but even my underwear was made out of flour sack. I used to think they were pretty, the ones with the flowers. So I go to school. I don't know what's going on around me. I don't know what's being said. I don't know that the kids are laughing at me and pulling my hair and pulling my dress up to look at my old underwear. And I'm wondering what all this is about. And I'm smiling, when they laugh, I laugh. Can you imagine? Can you imagine how ignorant that was? And how much more, they looked upon me as being ignorant. Which I was. I was illiterate to the fact of the outside world and the life that, everybody else was leading, because I was born and raised on a ranch in the country down by the river, where our fun was horseback riding, swimming in the river, all of that stuff. There was no modern day toys. I didn't even own a doll, because that was a waste of time. Then when I went home to my grandmother on a break, I said, I don't want to go back there. People are cruel, people are ugly, I don't want to be around them. I'd rather stay home here with you. And that's what my grandmother told me. You go back there and you learn. And you learn to be the best of them. Whatever they have to teach you, you learn. She says, when you learn all this and you are promoted to a higher level, you can come home. If you were dark and were of color, you were nobody. You were dumb. And I guess that's where I enforced their category of being a dumb Indian. I feel students need to understand that we as natives, we have strong minds, very strong minds. This is the way we were born.
Taking care of self, maintaining good health. Self-care enables a person to care for family and keep everyone else within the family circle healthy. This is a selfish virtue, doing for self in order to do for others.
It's very important that our children know this, that they are very intelligent, they are very smart, they just have to learn the other side. So, in our families, our few families that follow the old way, like through the Longhouse, they're the ones that I say are the survivors, because they are carrying on the old way of life. The belief of mind over matter. I have a strong thing about mind over matter. It's hard to think about what our kids are going through, how they have to learn here. Now we're going to turn them around and start trying to teach them this other way, but they have to learn this other way in order to survive. I feel history is a big part of our background. Our language is our life. You have to understand our language in order to be able to see these things, in order to be able to feel these things, in order to know that you have a guardian spirit within yourself to know, and that empowers you to be who you are.
Help family growth, service to others. To serve others by offering to help in as many ways as you can think of. This might include helping elders and other family members and friends. It also includes taking part in positive community events and activities that prevent violence, helping people to heal from traumatic experiences, eliminating substance abuse and chemical dependency, promoting positive understanding and involvement in your Indian culture, modeling and encouraging education and the pursuit of life goals for others, and working to increase the unity of all people. A fish doesn't know it's in water. You don't see the culture you're in until you're shaken out of it. I've traveled many places to present information on the oppressive U.S. mental health system in Native America, but I've never been able to bring Kala, Levina Kussamwhy Wilkins, with me. I had the idea to make this film using footage she granted me permission to use in combination with my own thoughts. In many ways, and in many places, the U.S. mental health movement continues to be a colonizing force. It's being exported worldwide. It's big business. The premise of this system is that it helps people to a better life. Very good people become entranced by helping in this way and offer years of hard work and service towards this ideal. But perhaps this short film helps affirm to you that the very people the mental health system might impose itself upon, especially with its coercive, sedating, stigmatizing, and poisoning practices, these people on the receiving end can already possess in their own cultures and families a level of wisdom that exceeds what the mental health movement can ever provide. This U.S. mental health system is a kind of culture within a culture. It has its own code of domination. Many people swim as fish in its waters, and they deserve the kinds of patience the virtues teach. They also deserve the truth, and speaking truth requires courage. I can assure you the 12 virtues of Níix Ttáwaaxt have been very useful for me in dealing with what Kala calls the so-called dominant society. This is why I sought her permission to bring them to you. After all, Kala speaks from a culture that's effectively resisted domination for over 180 years. Thank you from her and from me for letting me share these virtues with you. Now how shall we live?